The hatchling was still breathing. That was the only remarkable thing about it. It lay on the cold floor of Subcorridor 7, pressed against the base of a heating pipe that had not carried warmth in 3 weeks. The maintenance request for that pipe was sitting in a queue somewhere, number 412 on a list that nobody was moving through quickly. The corridor itself was narrow, lit by a single strip of emergency yellow, and it smelled like old coolant and recycled air. It was not a place anything living was supposed to be. Hatchling scales were dark, almost black, which was unusual for a dreamy newborn. They were supposed to come out pale and harden into color over the first few months. Black at birth meant something had gone wrong in the shell. The left wing was folded against its body the way wings were supposed to fold. The right wing was not. It bent at the second joint in a direction joints were not made to bend, and it had dried that way, fixed in a shape that would never open correctly. The hatchling could not fly. It probably never would. It was making a sound, very small, not a cry exactly, more like the sound a thing makes when it is working very hard just to stay. Ren Akafer came around the corner with a pressure gauge in one hand and a work tablet in the other. He was checking flow readings on the secondary water line, which had been dropping for 6 days, and which nobody else had been assigned to look at. He walked with the particular focus of someone who was used to being the only person who noticed things. He almost stepped on the hatchling. He stopped, he looked down, he crouched. For a moment he did not move at all. He had seen Dreevy before, the adults were hard to miss. 7 feet of scaled pride and controlled anger, but he had never seen a hatchling. It was smaller than he expected. Smaller than a house cat, curled into itself, one wing wrong, eyes closed, chest moving in shallow little pulls. Ren set his tablet on the floor. He pressed 2 fingers gently against the side of the hatchling's neck, the way he had learned to check pulse on living things during his emergency certification course 4 years ago. The pulse was there, weak and fast, but there. He pulled out his comm and called the medical bay. The person who answered listened to him describe what he had found. There was a pause. Then they told him it was a Dreevy matter. They told him to leave the area and file an observation report through the proper channel. They told him the Dreevy delegation had been informed about this situation already, and that station personnel were not to interfere with internal species decisions. Ren asked if that meant someone was coming. The person said that was not information they could share with maintenance staff. Ren ended the call. He looked at the hatchling. He looked at the corridor around him, empty, yellow-lit, cold. He thought about the heating pipe that had been out for 3 weeks. He thought about the queue. He thought about what number 412 meant in practical terms. Nobody was coming, not for the pipe, not for this. He unzipped his outer work jacket. It was a heavy thing, insulated, with the station logo on the left chest and a small grease stain on the right sleeve that had never fully washed out. He folded it once and laid it on the floor. Then, very carefully, he lifted the hatchling with both hands. It weighed almost nothing. That was the part that stayed with him later, how little it weighed, how small the whole problem was physically, how easy it was to just pick up. He wrapped the jacket around it loosely, leaving space for air. He tucked the bundle against his chest and straightened up. The hatchling made a sound, different from the one before. Ren looked down. 2 eyes opened. They were gold, pale gold, the color of old light through dirty glass, and they looked directly at him with the particular focus of something that had been waiting in the dark for a very long time and was now, for the first time, looking at something real. Ren looked back. He stood there for a moment in the yellow corridor with a broken dragon wrapped in his work jacket and a pressure gauge in his free hand and a maintenance ticket that still needed closing. Then he turned around and walked back the way he came. He did not file the observation report. He did not leave the area. He went to his quarters on level 4 and laid the hatchling on his bunk and went to the small cabinet above his sink and found the emergency heat pack he kept for long cold side shifts. He cracked it, shook it, and tucked it under the jacket beside the hatchling's body. The pulse, when he checked again, was still weak, but it had not gotten weaker. He sat on the floor next to the bunk. He did not sleep. He just sat there and listened to the hatchling breathe, and every time the breathing continued, he noted it like a small entry in a log that nobody had asked him to keep. By morning, the breathing was steadier. Wren made a note of that too. Station Chief Arla Dunn had a particular expression she used when someone had done something she could not technically punish them for. It involved her jaw and her left eyebrow, and a stillness in her eyes that made people want to apologize even when they had done nothing wrong. She was using it now. Wren sat across from her desk with his hands on his knees and his back straight and said nothing. On the desk between them was a printed copy of the Accord Station Code, open to a section Arla had highlighted in red. She told him that the Dreevy Elder Voss had formally complained. She told him that Voss had used the words cultural desecration in his message. She told him that the diplomatic office was asking her to resolve the situation quietly before the morning briefing. Wren asked what resolving quietly meant. Arla said it meant returning the hatchling to Dreevy custody. Wren asked what would happen to the hatchling after that. Arla did not answer immediately. That was its own kind of answer. He had expected this conversation. He had spent the hours before it reading the Accord Station Code on his personal tablet, working through the legal index with the same slow patience he brought to leak diagnostics. He had found something interesting in Section 41, Subclause 9. It was a provision written 80 years ago during a territorial dispute between two species whose names most people on the station could not pronounce. It stated that any living being found abandoned without custodian in neutral station space, with no active claim filed within one standard cycle, could be placed under informal protective custody by any station resident in good standing. No active claim had been filed. Wren was in good standing. He had never even received a formal warning, which was more than most people could say. He told Arla this. He showed her the section. She read it twice. Then she looked at him with the expression again, but something behind it had shifted. She told him he was going to cause a diplomatic incident over a dragon that his own species had nothing to do with. He said he was going to file for informal custodianship over a living creature that had been left to die in Subcorridor 7 with a broken wing, and no food, and a pipe that had been out for 3 weeks. She told him the pipe was unrelated. He said he knew. She picked up her comm and called the legal office. The process took 4 hours. It was not fast. There were forms. There were 3 separate confirmations of the provision's validity because nobody had ever actually used it before. There was a conversation between Arla and a Velthari legal clerk named Fiend that Wren was not present for but which Arla described afterward as exhausting. At the end of it, a document existed. Wren Akaffer, maintenance technician, level 4 residential, was now the registered temporary custodian of one Dreevy hatchling, unregistered, sex undetermined, condition listed as critical stable. Elder Voss was informed. His response came back in 12 minutes. Wren was not shown the full text, but Arla read him the relevant section, which described the action as an insult to the Dreevy people, an offense against natural order, and evidence that humans were not yet mature enough for Accord membership. Wren said that seemed like a lot. Arla said she agreed. Back in his quarters, Wren had a different problem. The hatchling was awake and moving, which was progress, but it had not eaten, which was not. He did not know what Dreevy hatchlings ate. He messaged the station's xenobiology database and got back a long document that said, among other things, that Dreevy newborns in the first week required high-protein organic matter, preferably predigested by an adult, and that without it they declined rapidly. He did not have access to predigested anything. He had a food printer, standard station issue, and a small refrigerator, with 3 protein packs and half a block of pressed grain. He opened a protein pack, broke off a small piece, and held it in front of the hatchling's face. The hatchling sniffed it, pulled back, sniffed again. Then it bit down on Ren's finger by accident, realized immediately that his finger was not food, and transferred its attention to the protein piece. It ate slowly, not much, but it ate. Ren logged this in the notebook he had started keeping on his personal tablet. He wrote, Day 2, 8 approx. 4 grams protein pack, accepted human food, wings still wrong, eyes tracking well, pulse stronger. He thought about what Voss had said, evidence that humans were not mature enough. He looked at the hatchling, which had finished its 4 grams, and was now sitting up on its own for the first time, looking at him with those pale gold eyes like he was a puzzle it was deciding whether or not to solve. He did not feel particularly mature. He felt tired and slightly worried and responsible for something that had not asked him to be responsible for it. But the hatchling was sitting up. Yesterday it had not been sitting up. He wrote that down too. The mediation chamber on level 6 was a room designed to make everyone feel equally uncomfortable. The chairs were built for 4 different body types and satisfied none of them. The lighting was set to a neutral spectrum that made all skin tones look slightly wrong. The table was long and white and had no objects on it, because objects gave people things to fidget with and accord mediators preferred fidgeting to happen internally. Mediator Fiend sat at the center. Fiend was Velthari, which meant 6 limbs, 2 of which were currently folded across what passed for a chest, and a set of compound eyes that reflected the room in small, repeated copies. Fiend was one of the better mediators on the station, known for asking questions that felt simple until you tried to answer them. Elder Voss sat on one side. He had come in full formal wear, dark-scaled armor layered over dark scales, which meant he wanted this to feel official. He had 2 members of his delegation behind him, and he had not looked at Ren once since entering the room. Ren sat on the other side. He was wearing his second-best uniform because his best one had protein pack on it. He did not have anyone behind him. Arla had offered to come. He had told her it was fine. Fiend opened by summarizing the situation in the flat, complete way that Velthari used for official proceedings. Every fact stated, no weight given to any of them, the whole thing delivered like a list of ingredients rather than a story. At the end, Fiend looked at Ren and asked him to explain his reasoning. Ren explained it the same way he had explained it to Arla. He had found a living thing. Nobody was helping it. He helped it. Fiend asked if he understood that the Drevi people had a cultural framework around hatchlings born, with physical irregularities. Ren said he understood they had one. He said he did not agree with it. Voss spoke for the first time. His voice was low and carried the particular texture of someone who was used to being listened to. He said that agreement was not required. He said the Drevi had maintained their traditions for 6,000 years without human approval and intended to continue doing so. He said the hatchling's condition meant a life of limitation and pain, and that what he had authorized was not cruelty but mercy. Ren waited until Voss had finished. Then he said that humans had believed the same thing once, about their own. He said there had been a time when humans left behind anyone who could not keep up, because survival required it. He said that time ended. He said what changed it was not resources or technology. It was just people deciding that the definition of who deserved to stay was wrong. The room was quiet for a moment. Fiend looked between them and then asked Ren a question that was not on the prepared list. Fiend asked what the hatchling's name was. Ren had not been expecting that. He sat with it for a second. He had been calling the hatchling Little One in his head for 2 weeks. He had not said it out loud because it felt like a decision he was not sure he had the right to make. But Fiend was asking, and in an accord mediation, a question from the mediator was a formal prompt. The answer went on record. Ren said Sorai. Fiend's stylus moved. The name went into the record. Voss made a sound that was not quite a word. One of his delegation members leaned forward and said that the nomming of a Dreevy hatchling was a clan rite and could not be performed by an outsider. Fiend said with complete neutrality that the hatchling had been formally registered as unclaimed under station code before the name was given. Unclaimed individuals under station code fell under neutral jurisdiction. The name was legally valid. Voss stood. He did not say anything. He walked out of the room with his delegation behind him, and the sound his boots made on the floor was very controlled and very deliberate, which was somehow worse than if he had slammed something. Fiend recorded the session outcome as unresolved, pending further development. Then Fiend looked at Ren and said, in a slightly different tone than the official one, that the name was a good choice. Ren asked what Sorai meant in Velthari. Fiend said it did not mean anything in Velthari. Fiend asked what it meant in the human language Ren had taken it from. Ren said it meant to remain. Fiend wrote that down too, though Ren did not think it was part of the official record. That night Ren came back to his quarters and found that Sorai had somehow climbed from the modified nest on the floor all the way up onto the bunk. The hatchling was sitting on Ren's pillow with the self-satisfied posture of something that had accomplished a significant physical task and knew it. Ren looked at the pillow, he looked at the floor, he considered the logistics. Then he moved the pillow to one side, lay down on the remaining half of the bunk, and went to sleep. Sorai pressed against the side of his head and breathed in the slow rhythm of something that had decided, for its own reasons, that this was where it was going to stay. The carry pack had been designed for tool storage. It had a wide front pocket, a padded interior, and a strap system that distributed weight across both shoulders. Ren had removed the tool dividers, added a folded thermal liner from the medical supply room, and cut 2 small holes near the top for ventilation. The result was not elegant, but Sorai fit in it perfectly and had, after one experimental morning, accepted it without complaint. This was how Ren began bringing Sorai to work. The station had 312 regular staff and a rotating population of visitors, diplomats, and trade personnel that pushed the number closer to 500 on busy cycles. Within 1 week, most of them knew about the dragon in the carry pack. Within 2 weeks, Sorai had become the kind of known thing that people mentioned when describing the station to newcomers. There's a human maintenance tech, they would say, and he has a small dragon that rides on his back. Don't be alarmed. It's fine. Sorai was mostly fine. The broken wing had healed into its wrong shape and stayed there, which the xenobiology database had predicted. The rest of Sorai had grown. Not dramatically. The little dragon was still small enough to fit in the pack, but there was a solidity now that had not been there in the corridor. The gold eyes were brighter. The scales had begun to shift from dark to something with blue underneath, visible when the light hit right. Sorai ate well, had strong opinions about which protein packs were acceptable and which were not, and had developed a habit of sitting on Ren's shoulder when he was doing close inspection work and staring at the same pipes and panels with an expression that looked, to anyone watching, like professional interest. Workers from other departments started stopping by during Ren's rounds. A Thurvani engineer named Wex, whose species communicated partly through color shifts in their skin, came by 3 times in 1 week, and each time the color patterns ran warm when Sorai looked at them. A pair of Accord administrative staff asked if they could take an image. Ren said he did not mind. Sorai sat up straight for the image with the dignity of someone who had been expecting this. Not everyone was comfortable. Dreevy who passed in the corridors walked a wider path. Some did it out of dignity. Some did it because a Dreevy hatchling bonded to a non-Dreevy was something that had no clear category in their cultural understanding, and things without categories made people walk carefully. 2 of Elder Voss's junior soldiers were assigned to observe. Ren noticed them on the 2nd day, following at a distance that they clearly believed was subtle. They were large. heavily built, scaled in the military gray-green that Drevi soldiers favored. They did not speak to Ren. They just followed, watching, taking notes on their own tablets. On the fourth day of this, Ren was doing a pressure check on a junction valve in the lower corridor when he realized the two soldiers had closed the distance. They were standing behind him, not doing anything, just standing close, in the way that large things stand close when they want you to understand that they are large. Ren was about to turn around when Sorai dropped from his shoulder. The hatchling landed on the floor between Ren and the soldiers. Sorai was 1/4 their height and about 1/15 their weight. The broken wing dragged slightly on the right side. Sorai looked up at the two Drevi soldiers with the gold eyes and did not move. The soldiers looked down. There was a long moment where nobody did anything. Then one of the soldiers made a sound, not aggressive, something more complicated than that, and took a step back. The other followed. They maintained their distance for the rest of the shift and filed a report that evening that Ren never saw, but which Arla described to him later as one of the strangest documents she had read in 20 years of station management. It said in the formal Drevi military style that the hatchling had performed a guarding behavior toward the human, unprompted. Voss read the report. Arla knew this because the complaint stopped. No new messages came from the diplomatic office. No further sessions were scheduled. The file on Sorai's case moved to a watch category, which meant it was still open but nobody was actively pushing it. Arla told Ren this over a meal in the staff canteen. She said it carefully, the way she said things she was not sure how to feel about. Ren was watching Sorai on the table across from them, methodically disassembling a piece of pressed grain to get to the center, which was apparently the acceptable part. He said he thought Voss was waiting to see what happened. Arla asked what he thought would happen. He said he did not know. He said things were going okay so far. Arla looked at Sorai. Sorai had finished the grain and was now sitting with its tail wrapped loosely around Ren's wrist, watching the rest of the canteen with calm gold eyes, and the people in the canteen were watching back with the particular expression of people who had stopped being surprised by something and started being fond of it instead. Arla said she supposed things were going okay. She did not say it like someone who had expected that outcome. She said it like someone revising a prediction she had been fairly confident about. That counted, Ren thought, as progress. The message from Elder Voss came on a rest day, which was either a coincidence or a deliberate choice. It was short. It said that Voss wished to speak with Ren privately, without mediators or record, and that he would come to Ren's quarters at the third evening hour if that was acceptable. Ren sent back one word, acceptable. Arla found out about it 20 minutes later because very little happened on the station that Arla did not find out about. She called Ren and told him she wanted to send a staff member. Ren said no. She told him Voss was a Drevi elder with military rank and unknown intent. Ren said he would be fine. She asked how he could possibly know that. He said Voss had asked to come to him, which meant Voss wanted something, and people who want things do not usually start conversations by causing damage. Arla said that was a very optimistic reading. Ren said he was a maintenance technician. He found optimism useful. Voss arrived precisely at the third hour. He knocked, which was not something Ren had expected. The Drevi he had observed did not generally knock, they arrived. Ren opened the door and stepped back to let him in. Voss was not in formal wear. He had on a plain dark tunic, the kind of thing you wore when you were not representing anything, just yourself. He was still large, all Drevi were large, and the quarters felt smaller with him in them. He stood in the center of the room and looked around at the modified bunk, the tool cases along the wall, the food printer with the protein pack inventory list taped to the side. Then he looked at Sorai. Sorai was on the bunk, sitting up, watching Voss with the total attention that the little dragon gave to new things. Not fear, not aggression, just information gathering, patient and complete. Voss looked at Sorai for a long time. Ren did not offer him a seat because there was only one chair, and it was not built for a dreamy body. He leaned against the wall and waited. Voss said, "The hatchling's clutch parent was called Dreva Ori." He said it like a name he had carried for a long time, carefully, the way you carry something fragile. Ren said he did not know that name. Voss said most people did not anymore. He said Dreva Ori had been born with a scale condition, not structural, not dangerous but visible. Patches of pale across the chest and neck that the Drevi read as irregularity. There had been a debate in the clan about what to do. Voss's father had wanted the standard resolution. Voss's mother had refused. There had been years of quiet shame in the family, the kind that never fully said itself out loud but shaped everything around it. Ren asked what happened to Dreva Ori. Voss said she became the finest navigational mind the Drevi had produced in 2 centuries. He said she mapped 11 routes through uncharted sectors that the Accord still use today. He said she died 20 years ago in a pressure failure during an exploration run, and that her name was in the Accord Navigational Registry and on a marker in the Drevi Memorial Hall, and that he had stood in front of that marker more times than he could count. He stopped talking. The room was quiet except for the ventilation and the small sound of Sorai shifting on the bunk. Ren said he was sorry. He said it simply, the way he said things he meant. Voss said that when the hatchling had been brought to him, wrong wing, wrong color, too small, he had not seen the hatchling. He said he had seen the argument, the old one, the one his family had survived and paid for. He said he had made the decision he had made because it was faster than feeling what it actually was. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Ren said, "You can visit if you want." Voss looked at him. It was not the look he had used in the mediation chamber. It was something less composed and more real. Ren said that Sorai was going to grow up and one day want to know where they came from. He said Voss was the only person who could answer that. He said that seemed worth something, even if the beginning had been wrong. Voss said he did not understand why a human would offer that, after everything. Ren said he was not sure it was complicated. He said the easy thing and the right thing were not always different. Sometimes they were the same, and people just expected them to be separate. Voss looked at Sorai again. Sorai had moved to the edge of the bunk, which put the hatchling closer to Voss than before. The gold eyes were on him, not blinking, not performing, just looking the way Sorai looked at everything, like it was worth understanding. Voss reached out one hand, slowly, his scaled fingers extended toward Sorai's face. Sorai leaned forward and sniffed along his knuckles, then pressed the side of a small scaled head against his palm and stayed there. Voss did not say anything. He stood very still with his hand against the hatchling's head, and his face arranged into something that had no official Drevi name but which Ren recognized, because he had seen it on humans plenty of times. He left shortly after. He did not say goodbye, he just walked to the door and opened it, and then stopped in the frame for a moment without turning around. He said, "Sorai is a good name." Then he left. He came back 3 days later in the early morning, and asked Ren if he could walk the rounds with them. Ren said yes. 6 months passed the way time passes on a station, in shifts and meal cycles and small repeated tasks, without seasons to mark it, without weather to interrupt it, just the ongoing work of keeping a large structure alive in a cold place. Sorai was not small anymore. Not large, not by Drevi standards, but the hatchling phase was over. Sorai was lean and quick, scaled now in deep blue-black with the occasional flash of copper when the light caught right, and moved through the maintenance corridors with a confidence that came from knowing every junction and valve and pressure point on levels 2 through 7 better than most of the staff did. The broken wing was still there, still wrong, still dragged slightly on the right. Sorai had stopped accommodating it and started working around it in a way that looked, over time, less like a limitation and more like a characteristic. The carry pack was retired. There was a standing tradition on the station now where new personnel were given a three-point orientation, safety protocols, canteen hours, and a brief explanation of Saurai, so they were not startled on their first corridor encounter. The explanation included the information that Saurai would not bother you unless you bothered Ren, and that bothering Ren was inadvisable for unrelated logistical reasons. Mediator Fiend had filed the report 4 months earlier. It was a formal precedent document, dry and precise, the kind of writing that was designed to survive being read by people who did not want to be moved by it. It established a clarified definition of abandoned persons under Accord Station Code, removing the implicit assumption that the provision applied only to humanoid species. Any living being, the document now said. Any station. Any custodian in good standing. It was a small change. 3 words added, 2 removed, 1 clause reworded. The kind of thing that showed up in legal indexes and not in news reports. But Fiend had told Ren, in the particular careful way that Velthari used when they were saying something they cared about, that small legal changes had long tails. That the words would still be in the registry long after everyone currently on the station had moved on. Ren had said that seemed like a good reason to be careful about words. Fiend had agreed. The promotion offer came from Central Operations on a standard cycle morning, a senior systems coordinator position on a larger station, better quarters, better pay, more responsibility. Ren read it twice. Then he sent back a single question asking whether the position allowed for a registered companion of Dreevy secondary status. The response took 2 days, which was long for Central Operations. The answer was yes, with documentation. The documentation had already been filed, 6 weeks earlier, by Elder Voss. Ren had not known about this. He found out when Arla showed him the formal clan registration, a secondary designation, not the main bloodline, but real Dreevy paperwork with a real clan seal. It listed Saurai's full registered name as Saurai of the Akafar Accord, secondary of Clan Voss, and under the field for origin classification it said, in the formal Dreevy legal script, recognized from neutral station custody. Ren sat with this document for a while. Then he went to Voss's quarters and knocked. Voss opened the door. Ren held up the document. Voss looked at it and then looked at Ren with the expression that still did not have a Dreevy name but which had become familiar over 6 months of early morning rounds and shared corridor work. Ren said thank you. He said it simply and completely, without adding anything to it or taking anything away. Voss said that Saurai deserved a full name. He said that was all. Ren said that was enough. He accepted the promotion. He submitted the companion documentation. He told Arla, who said she was not surprised, which was not entirely true but was the kind of thing you said when you wanted something to feel inevitable. She arranged a small gathering in the canteen on his last regular shift. Not a party, just people who had gotten used to seeing him and Saurai in the corridors and wanted to mark the fact of that. Saurai sat on the canteen table and accepted attention from everyone who offered it and maintained, throughout, the expression of someone for whom this was simply the correct order of things. On the last morning before transfer, Ren walked his usual rounds one more time. Level 2 through 7, all the junctions and valves and pressure points, the heating pipe in Subcorridor 7 that was now fixed and had been fixed for 4 months, and which someone had put a small handwritten tag on that said working, finally. He checked everything the same way he always had, slowly, twice when he was not sure, once more when he was. Saurai walked beside him, 3 good legs and one that dragged slightly, moving through the corridors with the easy familiarity of something that had always been there. The station went about its work around them, people passing, equipment running, the low constant hum of systems doing what systems were supposed to do. Fiend's report was filed somewhere in the Accord registry. Voss's paperwork was in the clan records. The legal provision existed in the station code. Nobody was talking about any of it this morning. It was just a maintenance tech doing his rounds, and a dragon walking beside him, and the station carrying on. That was, in the end, exactly what it was supposed to be.